All right, folks, here's a couple answers to some of your questions for the classes so far. So when we're working with an athlete, should we train more than just the movement the athlete is having to perform in their sport? And absolutely. Now, I like the example that you have a lineman pushing a sled. It's going to have some carryover, but we don't want to try to train things exactly. It's kind of like we wouldn't necessarily want to have somebody just keep lifting, for example, we're talking about cheerleading and you're throwing a stunt, just having them try to find the biggest person they can try to throw in the air to overload it, and or try to find somebody's like infant so they can have a lighter version. So we're always going to use a certain amount of training. And that's why typically using barbells and dumbbells is because they're easy to balance, easy to overload, and use that as a stimulus to help increase strength, hypertrophy, and power. Now we'll use other implements to also enhance power. This could be jumps, this could be ball throws and otherwise. And then we're also going to want to have some type of conditioning component. In some sports, we don't want to necessarily try to condition it by trying to overload the movement. And then also the overloading the movement in certain ways is going to help us. Like if we wore really heavy boxing gloves, well, the goal is to be able to punch, come back. And yes, we need to have the endurance to keep our arms up, but the way that we're training those muscles, the energy systems, the fibers we're recruiting are very different between holding our guard and throwing a punch. And we're going to be throwing off our essential motor patterns if we're trying to keep throwing punches with heavy dumbbells otherwise, because it's actively causing us to try to keep our arms up higher. So as soon as we let go of the dumbbells, in theory, we're going to be punching super high. So don't do that. Plus, we do want to have obviously a conditioning component, and certain things don't lend well to the conditioning being doing it in the sport. So, like MMA, obviously fighting someone is going to be the best way to condition for fighting. However, you're also going to be taking blows to the head and other types of damage to your body. That isn't a good thing to be taking all the time. So, because of that, you want to make sure that you're still training in ways that are going to mimic the sport, but not give you the exact carryover because it can beat you up. How do I increase the health of my cardiovascular system without causing muscle wasting? The amount of cardio you have to do in order to cause muscle wasting is pretty high. So just going for long walks, riding a bike, and then you can even do kind of, I guess you call it more meathead cardio, where you're doing sled dragging, heavy resistance, cycling, things that are going to require resistance and overload and help you maintain your muscle mass. In drop set training versus eccentric training, which one recruits more motor units? The one that's heavier. So if you're doing maximal eccentrics or sub or supra maximal eccentrics, it's going to recruit more motor units. But whenever you get to the end of that drop set or that end of that eccentric set, you're definitely going to be tapping into pretty much all the fibers you can. Athlete thinking about the keto diet, what is the best way to maybe explain to them that they should look at other ideas or diets? Well, first and foremost, depends on what they're trying to do. If you're trying to be a ketogenic athlete and you're doing something that you can effectively make it work for just about anybody, but as far as really enhancing their performance, it's probably not going to really help enhance it. Now, if that's a diet they can adhere to that causes them to lose weight to be healthier, then by all means, go ahead and do so. But a lot of other folks, it tends to be too restrictive. So you just have to ask yourself, can you effectively swear off, carbohydrates for the rest of your life? Are you going to be able to maintain this type of diet irregardless? Do you have a family? Do you have a significant other that likes to eat carbs and you feel comfortable being around them all the time when they're doing it? And like anything else, you're going to be very comfortable with being very meticulous with timing of carbohydrate so that you're going to be able to bolster your performance, but not kick yourself out of ketosis. So it's something that if someone wants to experiment with it, by all means, unless they've got some type of issue with hypoglycemia or anything else that's obviously a major medical issue, then yeah, they could experiment. But for most folks, everyone tends to be very evangelical about whatever works for them to lose weight. That doesn't mean it's what's going to work well for everybody. So just because it worked for person A doesn't mean it's going to work for person B. So when in doubt, just try to get them to just make better dietary decisions. And first and foremost, if they want to try the keto diet and they can't even eat a quote unquote healthy diet normally, much less adhere to it, then you just need to get them to adhere to a basic diet first. Then maybe worry about trying to get into something like ketogenic diet. It's better to eat more carbs in your diet when trying to lose weight or less. Well, it depends on how you respond. Remember, the big key components of weight loss is getting ourselves into a caloric deficit. If we're in a caloric deficit, then that's going to help us obviously lose weight. If we're in a caloric surplus, we're going to gain weight, whether that happens to be from too many carbs or too much fat. It's still going to give us the same effect. Now, some folks do better on a low carb diet simply because the higher fat intake relative has the ability to help them feel more satiety And from there, they're going to eat less calories and be able to adhere. Other folks like the higher carb diet because you get to eat a greater volume of food typically than if we're going with a greater amount of fat. And it just happens to work better for their own tastes. And then you have to think about, what do people have issues with overeating? If you're someone that naturally overeats on carbs, then maybe it would be better to be on a low carb diet when you're trying to lose weight, because you're less likely to overeat, which once again is going to kick you back into that caloric balance or surplus, and vice versa is true. So it's not one's better than the other. There is some genetics to some people do better on one than the other, and you have to experiment once again to kind of figure out what's going to work for you. So thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.